In this video, we are going to continue from where we left off in the previous video. So what I want to do is connect to another data source. So the data we're looking at the moment here, it's okay. However, this column here that's got state, it's got the full names of the state. Sometimes when you're working with data, it's good to have the abbreviations for the states as well. So, and usually the abbreviation are usually 2-letter abbreviation. So we're going to connect to a public data source on the Wikipedia site and then interact with the data there, which gives the abbreviated 2-letter names for each of the states. So this is the Wikipedia site, and if you scroll down here, it tells you it's got a list of US state abbreviations. This is the data we want. So if you scroll down here, you can see the list. We've got the states and then we've got the abbreviations. So we are going to connect to this data source and interact with it. We're going to do some shaping of the data so that we can get it to work with the data we have. So to begin, let's copy the link from this site. I'm going to click and copy, and then we'll connect to the data source and bring that data into the Power Query editor. So we've got the Power Query editor here. So on the new source inside the ribbon area, just click on the drop down and select web. And we're going to go to here. We're going to paste in that link from the Wikipedia site and click OK to connect to that data source. So you can see here it's connected to it, and the navigator area shows us the type of data that it has brought back. So these are all the data from that site. The one we're interested in at the moment is this one that says codes and abbreviations for US states. So click on that checkbox, and that previews what's inside that table. So once you've got that previewed, click on the OK button to bring this data into the Power Query editor. So we have the data now brought in to the Power Query editor. We will need to shape this data before we can work with it. So let's start shaping the data. First thing I want to do, I want to remove the top 3 rows. These rows are a result of the way the web pages table was created, and we don't really need them. So to remove them, inside the Home tab here, there is an option that says Remove Rows. So click on this inside the ribbon area and just click on Remove Top Rows. We want to remove the top 3 rows, so just type in 3 and click OK. We also don't need the bottom 26 rows, so we want to remove those as well. So we go through the same process. So under the remove rows, we click on the drop down, select remove bottom rows, and just type in 26 and click OK, and that will remove the bottom 26 rows. The next thing we want to do is filter out Washington DC. The retirement table does not include Washington DC, so we'll need to exclude it from our list. So to do that, select the drop down arrow besides the name and status region 2. Click on that drop down here, and inside there, make sure you clear the checkbox next to the federal district. So uncheck that federal district and click OK. The next thing we want to do is remove unwanted columns. The only columns we're interested in here basically is the column for the states and then the abbreviated name. So we want to be able to map each state to its official 2-letter abbreviation. And that information can be found in the 2nd and 5th column. So this is the first column, that's the second. We want this second column, and then we want the 5th. So this is 3rd, 4th, 5th. So what we want to do, we want to select all the columns that we don't need and we'll remove them so that we are left with just 2 columns. So to select the columns we don't need, just click on the first one, and then you can hold down the Control key and then select the others you do not want to keep. So I'll select this one. I'm keeping this second column. I'm not keeping that. I am keeping the 5th column. So I'm keeping column 2 and column 5. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I'm clicking on the columns that I want to remove. So I'll select that, select that, select that as well. And I'll scroll, select this, select that. So make sure you've got all the columns selected that you want to remove. Once you've got that selected, click on the remove columns option, click on the drop down and click on remove columns, and that will remove all the columns. You can see I've still got this one here, so I need to make sure that is removed. All right, so now I only have 2 columns. We have the names of the states and then the corresponding 2-letter abbreviated names. The next thing we want to do, we want to use the first row as headers because we removed the top 3 rows. The current top row is the header we want. So to do that, while that is selected, we click on here. It says use first row as header. Highlight that and click that. All right, so use first row as header is selected. If you look on the right hand side here under applied steps, it is recording everything we've been doing from the time we connected to the source data to the navigation page. So every action we take is recorded in this applied steps. If you can't see these query settings show up, just go to click on the view tab and select query settings, and that will show the applied steps. The sequence of the applied steps is important in that it can affect how the data is shaped. So you can see the sequence of steps. So any steps that you're not happy with, you can always delete that step just by clicking on the X. All right. So if you remove a step from the applied step list, subsequent steps might not behave as originally intended because of the impact of the query's sequence of steps. So make sure that your steps are in the order that you want them. So let's continue with the shaping of our data. Next thing I want to do is rename the columns of the table and also the table itself. So let's rename the columns first. So I've got this highlighted. I'm going to right click and there is an option for rename. So I'm going to click rename and I'm going to call this state names. And I'm going to do the same for this column here. I have it selected, right click, and I'll click on rename. And I'm going to call this one state code. So I've now renamed my 2 columns. Also, what I want to do, I want to rename the table, this table here called codes and abbreviation. I'm going to right click on it and rename it to say state code. So I'm just going to call it state code and make the first letter capital. All right. So now I've renamed my table and also renamed the 2 columns inside that table. I'm going to end this video here. In the next video, we're going to combine data. So we now have 2 tables, one called ranking of best and worst retirement places, and then we've got this state codes. We're going to combine the data from both tables.